But let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about Eternals anymore. Let's talk about the other Marvel movie that's coming out next week. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Simu, Aquafina, Tommy Chu Wang Leung, and Michelle Yeoh. Who doesn't love Michelle Yeoh?
You know what? She is an international treasure. There's no other way. I mean, yeah. If I could pick somebody to beat me up, because I mean it would be her, and I would be so proud, you know that
Michelle Yeoh kicked my ass.
Yes, it would be like, you know who just beat the snot out of me? Look! I mean, look how bruised I am. Michelle Yeoh.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh.
It would be, and I know that sounds weird, and there's probably some.
I am not.
Anyway, I think that was the cosmic saying. You can stop talking about.
Right. Stop talking about getting beat up by Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with anything, Ryan. Okay.
No, it does not. But no. So for a second though, let's go back. Let's back up a little bit. Yeah. Marvel's history with the Ten Rings is spotty at best to this point. The Ten Rings were introduced as the name of the terrorist organization that kidnapped Tony Stark in Iron Man.
The
first appearance in the MCU. Yeah. Next time they appear is Iron Man 3, headed by the Mandarin, global terrorist organization. Turns out not to be headed by the Mandarin, but if you've seen Iron Man 3, you know how that shakes out. So those are our two mentions of the Ten Rings. Quick primer: in the comic books, 10 physical finger rings. Alien technology, powers, villain, right? No rings involved in the Marvel Comics universe to this point, except those circles on the flag with the different symbols in them. This film, Marvel attempts to reconcile the comics and the cinematic canon, and explains it as these 10 arm rings that have powers, but their origin is unknown. Fell from the sky, found in a tomb, so they would have been unknown somewhere else. Even so, we have even those origins are myth. But the worldwide reach of them, the organization is called the Ten Rings. So it ties into what we know from previous Marvel films. So I'm okay with how they attempt to reconcile what has gone and what the basis is with what they're trying to do now. I don't know how you felt, what you knew about the Ten Rings going in.
I mean, I knew some vague things about it. I think that they've kept the ideas similar enough, and I think it fits fine as far as I'm concerned. You know, it doesn't. It's not too awkward of a. You know, it suggests that maybe they did have some sort of plan, or at least at some point someone was able to go, okay, so here's some fragments that have not really been connected. Let's connect these two. Let's figure out how we do this. And they, you know, it could be well after the fact, and they just had someone who had a pretty good idea, and
they put them back together, right? Because again, in Iron Man, nobody knew what was going to happen with the MCU. There was no MCU at that point, so that I'm okay with the internal logic.
My guess would be that it's basically picking up, you know, you do Iron Man 3, they say, okay, well, who's the, you know, what's the organization? Well, you know, in the first one, there was this. We haven't done anything with this. And so it ends up there, and then when they come to writing this script, okay, how can we, connect this into what has already happened without relying entirely on what has happened?
Right.
Um, and I think that's one of this film's strengths, and a strength that I think that a lot of other studios should look at this film, because this film really could be a standalone. There are a couple things that if you've seen the other films, they'll tie into, and it will
Right.
give you like more understanding, or you'll be like, oh, I know where that guy's from. Oh, I know that guy's story. But it's not it's not, you don't absolutely have to know those things. And it doesn't feel like they're forcing the fact that this is a Marvel movie on you.
Right.
This is, it's not like G.I. Joe Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes, they go out of their way to insert characters that don't necessarily make any sense of being in the storyline, but they do it because we have to remind you that this is part of a bigger universe.
Right.
That's not really what's going on in this one. This film, if you hadn't seen any Marvel films, you could still watch this movie and get 95%
Yeah.
of what's
Or
going
more.
on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you might miss a couple of why is the audience laughing at this? Well, and there might be a couple things like that, but it's predominantly strong because it's its thing. It's its own thing. It
Yeah.
exists. It exists in the world of Marvel, but it's not tied. It's almost in the same way that Black Panther.
Yeah.
The tone's radically different, but the same idea of this is happening in the same world as these other things,
But not in the same circles.
but it's in it just on another part of the world or another, and the way the story goes, it doesn't feel like, well, where are the Avengers? Well, the Avengers are doing other stuff or whatever's going, I mean, wherever, however the time, it does. It's not like, well, clearly they should be involved in this. Well, no, I mean, it's a kind of a self-contained story, the sort of thing that might not hit the radar of a lot of people outside of that little area or whatever. So I mean,
but let's real quick. Let's place this. This is a couple years after Endgame.
Yeah.
In the chronology, so we've had the snap, we've had the blip, and the world is returning to normal. And we have our titular Shang-Chi living in San Francisco, and then the whole film is about his family history. Really, so it's a family film, Ryan.
It's a very dysfunctional family film.
It is a very dysfunctional family. Him, his sister, and his father. His father holds the 10 rings, and has for 1,000 years, because they've granted him eternal life, basically. But he's not a great guy. So the whole story kind of pivots off that. Aquafina is his best friend.
Yes, he's the best friend.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Who has no idea of
who
his
he
history.
is or his. But no, he's just Sean. And they park cars. They're valets.
At a hotel, yeah.
At a hotel in San Francisco. That's what they do.
And they don't want to be anything more than that.
Nope. And they stay up all night drinking and karaokeing.
Which, hey.
Yeah. Whatever. More power to you. I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, they anyway.
I wouldn't.
We'll leave that to where that is. Yeah.
Right. So we get a lot of martial arts in this. Very stylized.
Sure. Yeah.
In the classic way.
It opens almost as if it were a period Chinese fantasy film or kung fu film, the Wuxia films, and I love that because I love a lot of Asian cinema. I love what that was kind of going for. But I also like the fact that it didn't stay there, because that's not what this movie is.
No,
That's
it's
that's
about now.
it wasn't trying to be, Once Upon a Time in China or The Grandmaster or any number of
Right.
Hero or Crouching Tiger.
Tiger.
That's not really what they're doing. They reference a lot of that stuff in the beginning, but that is not what this movie is. So it's okay that they kind of tease me a little bit with it,
Right.
and then go, oh, and by the way, let's go this direction.
Okay.
Um,
So speaking of, we reviewed a film earlier this year
yeah.
that had a great opening, Mortal Kombat,
Wow. Yeah.
where we loved the opening in that, and the opening fight scene,
Mhm.
and that style, and then the rest of the movie let us down. And we both really did love that opening for Mortal Kombat.
Well, because it had so much promise.
Right. Well, and yeah.
It was the Mortal Kombat. It was like, how is this movie ever going to work? How am I ever going to take this seriously? And then they do that opening scene, and you go, oh, that's how.
That's how, and it's really good. This opening fight sequence between his father in the day and when he meets who will become his mother, who's the guardian or a guardian of this hidden village that contains like the martial arts secrets of a god, basically, is how his dad explains it. That fight sequence where she tells him he's not worthy to come in the village and learn their martial arts, and he needs to leave, and he wants to fight his way by. That fight sequence is better than the one that opened Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If you liked that fight sequence that opened Mortal Kombat, and I did a lot, this one is better. And I described it as that whole opening fight scene. If Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers did martial arts.
Sure, it is a very much a dance, and if you go back to or contemporary or even older Chinese kung fu films, that is part of the sword play, just in general, the fight sequences are so elaborate and so in a way they are a dance, and this takes it, I guess, maybe a little step further in that it literally does become a dance.
Yeah.
But Chinese cinema, a lot of the Hong Kong action films and things, just they have a beauty to them that is slowly making its way into Western cinema. But I think Japanese and Chinese cinema have had a major impact on particular areas of Western cinema, and it's mostly the genre films, and we're seeing a lot of that come out in some of the genre films right now, and obviously this one is it's essentially Asian cinema from, I don't know if it's for a Western audience, but it's there's so much of this film that plays homage to Asian cinema, and it should,
because it's a movie about
Asian.
Yeah, it's set in Asia. It's about Asian mythology. Well, not really Asian mythology, but
yeah.
But that's where it's set. So that's what it should evoke, and honor. And I think it does. The director, Destin Daniel Cretton, not a lot of directing credits, feature wise anyway. Before this, The Glass Castle, starring Captain Marvel. Just Mercy, starring Killmonger. So, and now he's directing an actual Marvel movie. But that's Marvel does that though.
Well, yeah,
a lot. They don't necessarily take, they're not bringing in Steven Spielberg.
Well, they don't need to necessarily, but I think positive and negative aspects of working for Marvel is that they're going, they have a team, and they'll put you on that team, and you might get to add your flavor, I guess. You're like
Right.
a cook. They, but they ultimately you're working, in a very controlled environment to a certain
Right.
extent. They want creativity, but they also want the movie they want.
Yeah.
So
They set the menu. You're just doing the cooking.
you're adding how hot the spices are,
Right.
or I mean, I don't want to diminish the role of a director in this, because I think every Marvel film would be radically different based on whoever directed it.
Yeah.
But
But they're still shooting in the Marvel lane,
yeah.
which
So
there are good and bad aspects to that. Yes.
but and ultimately it makes for a more even cinematic experience that spreads across the whole MCU.
Right.
Um,
So let's talk for a second about the relationship between Shang-Chi and Aquafina's character, Katie, his friend.
Sure.
Best friends.
Yeah.
Her grandmother thinks they're going to get married because that's what they should do.
Well,
They're like, haha.
That's what grandmothers think.
That's what it is. What all grandmothers think.
Oh, you're with a girl. You're going to marry her, aren't you?
Right.
Uh,
I don't know how I feel about the relationship in this movie.
I don't know that it's completely defined. We actually, I had a discussion. This was something that was debated. Where exactly the relationship is going, and I think a lot of us have a certain feeling. But there's yeah. Is it platonic? Is it not? Well, it's not exactly defined. There's things that you could see in it that
Right.
where you could go, but this,
Right.
but this. So yeah, I mean the relationship. I guess
It's
it is a little weird in that regard. But I
but I don't know that they need to. I don't know that they need to make it a relationship.
no, no, it's a friendship, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, and part
and
of this, as happens a lot in movies now, or not in movies now, but you saw it in Black Widow. This is very also very much about female empowerment, even though it's theoretically about him. Because his sister fled from her father and his organization at the age of 16, and set up a highly lucrative and powerful underground fighting ring as a 16-year-old girl. And Aquafina's like, good on you, and just so there's moments like that through the film where they don't sit and hammer girls are just as good as boys or female empowerment, but there's these little character moments. But then to have Awkwafina in this weird relationship position, it butt up against that for me, and that's I was like, well, that's just a really weird combo.
I just don't know that it necessarily means anything. I think there are people who have friendships that there is a point where they've either I mean, there are a lot of people who are friends with somebody for years and years and years, and they watch each other go through certain experiences, and then someday realize, oh, well, you know what? The one person that I've stuck with my entire life is probably the person that I want to be with. So, yeah. I mean, there's elements of it that I don't mind, because it's not like I mean, these two have been friends for a decade, or whatever.
Give or take.
So, it's not like. And relationships change. We get older. We want different things. So I don't have really any issues with what's in the film. Would I prefer that I would prefer to think that they don't have to end up together.
Right.
Like that it's not like giant thing that says, okay, well, these people have to end up together because it's a guy and it's a girl.
Right, and that's what I don't. That's what I said. I don't want them to feel like they have to go there.
And I don't think they have to. I think there are things that suggest that maybe they will, but I think that maybe further down the road that will make sense.
I hope so.
But we'll see. But you're right. I mean, there is. I want to point out that the tone of this film, because I think the tone of this film is more comedic and silly, more around the Thor Ragnarok feeling rather than Black Panther.
I wrote too much humor ?
And that is possible, particularly in the early stuff. There is a couple sections in the film that I think that feel like they're part of a different movie. I think it all does eventually come together by halfway through,
right,
and then everything starts to kind of work. But it does feel like that they're really stretching for some comedy at times, and not
Trevor. Excuse me.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I think for me, I would have reeled it in a little bit more than they did, particularly in the first half. But that's just, again, that's me. There are going to be a lot of people who love the fact that it's a bit silly.
Yeah, the bus fight that we've seen in the trailer is early in the film, and it vacillates between really good martial arts fights and almost, I don't want to say slapstick because that's too far in the other direction.
No, but there is a Looney Tune element to it.
Yeah, a little bit,
and not to the extent of that it's Kung Fu Hustle type Looney Tune Kung Fu, but it certainly, it doesn't take itself very seriously. I don't want to say ever, but particularly before, I think the first, if this is a 3 or 4 act story, the first act is a lot more loose and silly than where it eventually ends up. It never gets really serious, but it does get more serious.
Yeah,
there are parts of the story that I would change. There are things that I think that could have been strengthened, and a lot of it has to do with relationships and what makes sense and what would empower characters more, or why would this character make this decision when that doesn't seem like quite logical, or there's but not that everything has to be logical. But I think in general I like the film. I like the film quite a bit. It's not going to be on my the best of Marvel list. There might be moments that do. I mean, the ending's great. I mean, there's if you're looking for just action in a way that is slightly different than what we've seen before. The ending turns into a giant monster. Film.
It really does.
So I think in general, I'm fine with pretty much everything that this film did. I was on the fence, I think, a little bit, where I wasn't sure. A third of the way through. And ironically, once Michelle Yeoh shows up on the screen, then I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Actually, now
now you feel better.
Now I'm in. I'm just in. The way, and I don't think that's I think that's really about when she shows up on screen is kind of when the movie decides what it is.
Well, that's because that's when he has to decide what he is.
Yeah.
As we get told several times. No, I agree with you. I liked it overall. I had a couple, like I said, the way they're depicting the relationship between him and Awkwafina right now is just kind of weird for me. I feel like there was, like I said, it was borderline too much humor, but I had the same problem with Ragnarok, where I just felt like Ragnarok actually did have too much humor.
Yeah.
But that was a function of its director.
And I think this is in part of a function of who they've cast. Although Awkwafina is actually a better actress than a lot of people will give her credit for. But you have to give her material that is, that brings that out in her. I think it's her natural instinct to be a little more goofy. But if so I initially, because I like her as an actress, but there were times where I was like, I don't know. But then again, about 1/3 of the way through, it all kind of comes together, and it worked a lot better for me.
Right.
So it's that first act. It opens extremely well. Then you have this section where it just feels a little confused.
Yeah.
And then it starts to figure itself out and kind of works its way back to what that first section promised the film would be.
Right. How did you feel about, and if you've seen the trailers, you've seen this. How did you feel about the fight between Wong and Abomination?
I think I like that. I'm all if you're gonna do it, is it? I think, okay, here's the thing. A lot of people aren't gonna recognize what that is.
Right.
A lot of people haven't seen the Hulk.
Well, and it's an evolution of that character anyway.
Yes. So, there's for me, that is one of the few moments that was put in there for people who have seen the entire, everything.
Right.
Who've seen every film. So I it's a little showy.
Well, I don't mind Fight Club. I liked all the little plexiglass booths where like the undercards were happening. And my first thing is, why the hell is Wong fighting the Abomination in what would seem to be a choreographed fight in a fight ring? It's like, and then that's gone until the end, post, mid credit.
Yeah, maybe that's something you save a little differently, but I thought it was pretty funny.
Well, it was funny to watch Wong fight. It was just completely out of context, because that's everything we know. That's not.
But we don't.
I don't know. I could see Abomination winding up there fighting. Totally sure. Get that. Totally get it. Like, why the hell is Wong there?
And maybe we get that explained at some point.
And Doctor Strange too, maybe. But
so maybe I could throw out some theories. You want theories?
Sure.
Wong is auditioning. They're down a few Avengers. Wong is out there trying to find the talent necessary to replace some of these people. Where do people? It's cinematic thing where the guy goes to the Fight Club and finds. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that could, I think, explain it, or they just never do.
Or they just never do.
And I can see why you wouldn't like it, because does it make a lot of sense? Well, not exactly.
Currently, it makes no sense.
Well, yes.
Currently, it makes 0 sense.
Unless But I don't know. Here's the problem. It's like, but what if Doctor Strange told him he needed to go and recruit and he had to go and I don't know.
But then why is it fixed? Why is it choreographed?
Maybe just because they are there at that moment to make sure that, I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that's like I have like two issues with the film. Like, one is that just completely incongruous event of Wong being there for that reason in that manner. The other one is his father wants more and more power, which is why he wanted to go to the mother's village, this mythical village, to try to gain that martial arts power. But it's like, you have a worldwide organization of armies and terrorists and powerfuls, and you wield the Ten Rings. But no one knows who you are. No one really seems to know that organization exists, except as these little pockets of things. It's like you could take over the world already. So I was like, so that motivation's slightly off for me.
But what if it's the one group that is a threat to him?
And that's not how they present it. So I was just, it was just weird because like he could have been ruling the world anyway.
Well, and look, and I'll be.
I know it's a Marvel movie.
No, but the issues that I have with the story center on him in a lot of different ways.
Well, again, it's the Marvel villain.
So issue. Yeah, there are things about the way that, again, I don't mind where it ends up.
Right.
It's the getting there that I would have rewritten certain motivations and certain things to kind of make more sense.
Right.
And I won't go into that, but there are ways I think that they could have actually rather made the film stronger with just a tiny bit of finesse and a tiny different motivation on a couple different things. And again, it's easy for me to watch a movie and go, this is how that could have been better. I don't know that I would have come up with that if I was in the writing room or if I was tasked on my own. And obviously Marvel isn't calling me and asking me what I think. And,
no, they're not.
And well, that's
there are one or two people ahead of us on the list that they will be calling.
So there are things that I think that they could have, small little tweaks here and there that could have made the film stronger, that would have cleared up a few things, that would have made sense out of a few things that don't entirely make sense. So I think that's the difference between this and some of the best Marvel films, where it's like, yep, I can't think of a thing that I would, they executed that better than I could have imagined, and they've done that a few times. The first Avengers film, they nailed. The
Winter Soldier,
to a certain extent, all three Captain American films, they nailed. The first Iron Man, they nailed. There's a lot of that they've gotten completely right. I think even the final arc was pretty darn good. The final Avenger films, and that first Guardians they nailed, and so they've done certain things where it's just like, yeah, you've nailed it, and so it shouldn't be surprising that occasionally they do mostly good movies. It's and that's where this one fits in for me. Is it's definitely not one of the weak films.
No,
it's just that it's not one of the upper echelon either, and I wanted it to be.
This is not the Dark World.
And this and again, Dark World is what it is for a lot of different reasons. And Dark World probably, I'll be honest, I think probably the original vision for Dark World is better than whatever we got.
Right.
Whether or not that movie was actually ever made, I don't know. So.
No, yeah, but no. So I liked Shang-Chi. I think it's a better, because it does exist in this weird spot in the MCU films, because it's not in, phase 1 through 3. It doesn't, but it's not, we're not in phase 4 yet. I don't know that this kicks off phase 4.
We'll figure it out.
Right now, the closest spot I can put it, it's like a Captain Marvel film in terms of how it kind of sits with its own narrative. But I think it's a better film than Captain Marvel.
I don't know. I debate that, but I don't think we know. I think that's part of the thing, is we don't know how all these pieces are going to fit together. I mean, really, when you look at phase 1 through 3, that could just be phase 1, because it was really, I mean, phases 1 through 3 was one big connected story. And so I think it's a little misleading to say, well, we have 3 phases, and yeah, technically you did, because those films were released kind of in bunches, but technically speaking, that is
right.
That's where the story breaks are, is after the third, and now we're moving into whatever the second story is.
Right.
And will that be 3 phases or 4 phases or 7 phases? I don't know, but we're so early. And again, I think that's the strength of this film, that it wasn't trying to define anything yet.
Right. No, as a standalone, like I said, because Captain Marvel's pretty kind of a standalone, and the way they made it is and that's why I'm comparing the two. So if I'm comparing the two, I'm putting this one over that.
And I think they're pretty close.
Well, I did say it was a lot better.
Yeah.
I think it's better.
I would put them in the same box. If I were to group Marvel films, I think they would end up in the same box, which is in the
the middle,
rather than the top of the bottom. But again, I mean, we're what is it, 24, 25 films now?
Feels like.
I think it's too early for us to really know how this will shape or impact the big picture,
right?
Or if it even does. I mean, that's one thing that you have to give Marvel credit to, in that this film may simply exist to introduce a character, it not necessarily to build the storyline.
Right. Even though we'll start trying to wrap it up. There are 2 credit scenes.
Yeah.
In this one, there's a mid-credit and an end credit. The mid-credit scene seems to imply not just his involvement, but something larger.
Sure.
But
I think, again, this is where. Okay, let's compare this again to Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes should have only made that connection to the bigger G.I. Joe universe with the final scene that are the cuts, the post-credit scene that they had.
Right.
That's in that film. They should not have tried to shoehorn all this other stuff in. So I think the film exists in its own place, but then they say, okay, and this is what they did with a lot of the early, when they were building in phase 1, it was that scene that said, okay, and this is where it ties, and this is how the direction we're going to go. It's the cliffhanger sort of thing of, this is where it fits. You may not know what that picture is going to look like just yet, but if we were to draw a family tree,
right,
this is where that fits on the family tree.
Yep.
So I think that they use that very, very well, and I think sometimes in the films they also they kind of play with the idea and give us scenes that have pretty much, I mean, the Avengers where they go out to eat. Well, at that point, are they really trying to connect anything? No, there's not a lot to connect it. So they're just going to give us a kind of a scene that shows us a different side. But I think they've actually done really well with the post-credit
Yeah.
scenes and mid-credit scenes.
And then the post-credit scene in this one, I don't want to ruin. There's a couple of options for what it means, even though the basis for that scene isn't unexpected based on what we know about the characters in it or character in it. There's a couple of different theories about the rest of it. But then the splash screen after that is a pretty blatant, this is going to happen moving forward. So, and that I don't want to just out and out spoil, so I don't want to say it. But yeah, you know what I'm saying. But it's like Bloom will return. You know, so it's like that's a definitive statement. That's not a cute, you know, interesting scene to sit there and postulate on.
They've did that before, though. That's part of their thing.
Yeah, but that's not, you know, Thor will return in the Avengers. This will be, I mean, and that's a pretty big thing because theoretically it doesn't have to. So sure. And the characters in the mid-credit scene, I don't know why we needed those.
Well, It was a little, but no, yeah. But they're not really there.
But they're there. They are real time.
Well, I don't know.
They could be anywhere, but they do exist in the now.
There's probably 10 million conspiracy theories that are going to come out.
Oh, there are.
All of it. So
there are. And I'm not going to throw any of them out there.
So I would just say, no, I mean, I think there are two things. Marvel doesn't want us to forget that this is part of a bigger picture because financially.
Right.
I mean, technically speaking, probably every Marvel film that comes out is viewed as an advertisement for whatever Marvel movies have yet to come out.
Yep.
That's what
have you done for me lately?
Well, and that's what they do. I mean, they have to give you something to chew on because now you feel like you have to see whatever comes next.
Yep.
Because they have such everything needs to feel significant in a way. And I know this sounds like I'm contradicting myself and saying this film stands alone. It still feels like it's significant in the sense that we know how these stories build.
Mm-hmm.
And they're and 4 or 5 films from now, 1 or 2 things that happen in this movie will suddenly have meaning that it didn't have meaning in the film when you were watching it.
That Marvel's good at reminding you that don't think it's not important or don't think we're writing this off.
Well, and again, in this film, it's the 10 rings.
Right.
The 10 rings are important because, well, it was in this and this, and we're going to move that element forward now. And for those of you who have been playing along the whole time, you'll know that we just moved that forward. For those of you who are just coming on board, you may not know that we moved it forward, but
it's here now.
Well, and you see this movie now, and maybe you haven't seen any of the Marvel films, and maybe you don't see the other Marvel films. But what they've planted this thing where you feel like, well, I kind of need to see the next one, right?
Right.
And then they just layer that on you. So I mean, in a way, this is a great starting point. And it needed to be.
Yeah, it needed to be. I hope no one needs to be worried about this. It's, we talked, it's a little uneven at the beginning. But then it kind of finds its feet. And it's good. It's good. I don't think people need to worry. I don't want people going in worried about this film anymore. You're not going to think it's Endgame. That's not what it is. But again, it's not the Dark World. It's a good, solid entry that you should be able to enjoy.
yeah.
Because there's a lot to enjoy in it. So that's where I'm at. So yeah, I will recommend people watch it.
Yeah, recommend it again. Biggest screen possible.
Yeah, this one you want to see because some of the, I mean, well, the end battle, yeah, but even the opening,
there's
the
a lot
opening
in this
fight that
yeah.
I talked about, yeah, that's so gorgeous.
And we didn't see it in IMAX. We saw
no,
it,
we did not.
So at some point, I will do that. There's no question that I will at some point go and see this in IMAX.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can make that fit the schedule. So yeah, but it will be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings will be in theaters exclusively for 45 days before they put it on Disney Plus. And even then on Disney Plus, it will still probably be a premiere access.
Premium, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's the way that it should go.
It should start in the theater and then move to streaming. Yes,
I think this is the best option. Although that's me talking in non-pandemic times. If things continue to get darker, and numbers rise, and people don't take precautions and whatnot, maybe I don't know what's going to happen, but I think the future of cinema is right there. I think short theatrical releases, I think that's 45 days to me feels about right.
For exclusivity, because some films will stay once we're back. Some films will stay in theaters longer.
Correct. And that's yes. And then you have both options. Because I do think that they're undercutting themselves. I think we've seen, the Suicide Squad and a few other films that have really hurt themselves by doing day and date.
That's.
I think it's hard to judge the success of the Suicide Squad right now because of the way it was released. A lot of people are trying to pass it off as a flop. And I don't know that that's necessary. I don't know that we can tell. The only people who really know what the numbers look like is Warner Brothers, and
they ain't telling
on that. So whatever.
Yeah. So there you go. That is pretty spoiler free, I think. Discussion.
Well, and I think there's watching the film. There's it's not necessary. There's not a lot of. Even if we spoiled, I think, quote unquote, spoiled the film, a lot of it is so, again, that we're at the starting phase of a whole new storyline. There's not a lot to spoil at this point.
Right.
Because we don't know what the big picture is.
Right.
So it's not like, and then so-and-so shows up. That's not what this film's about.
No.
This film is about a very small, well, not very small, but a smaller story. The impact is not that they're saving the world, although in a sense they might be saving the world, but that's not what the stakes are.
Right.
For the purpose of this film, they're saving one corner of the world.
Yeah.
And ultimately that may make the difference, but still, they're just saving the one corner.
Yep. So there you go. That is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Releases next Friday, September 3rd.
Yeah, it's a little further.
Yeah, 2 weeks, September 3rd.
But you'll want to see this one a couple times, I think, guys. I really do think that you'll enjoy it. It doesn't feel long. It feels fairly brisk, and I just think that this was something that you will want to revisit because it is kind of it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, and definitely on the big screen. Definitely on the big screen. So that's it. That's the last big one we have to talk about right now. There are still more coming. I know we're a month and a skosh away from Dune when it hits, but I think it's going to be day and date too because it's Warner.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not a fan, but so I'll probably see that in the theaters because that Dune is
Well,
Dune is a big screen.
well, and there's a lot of things that factor into that as well. So
So, but no, we've got the Eternals a couple months down the road. They just released a new trailer for Marvel, so we'll see how that's going to tie back into everything else and moving forward. There's a lot of good other smaller films coming out that we're going to talk about. So stay tuned, and we will get to those. While you're out there, Ryan is still watching movies. I've still got movies. We're going to be talking about these little ones for you. So make sure you're keeping up with us. Follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. That's Facebook and Twitter. Twitter's the best. Hit the theater, see the movies you want to see if you feel safe. Streaming is out there if that's more comfortable for you. But as Ryan said in a previous episode, support the arts however you can because it's important. So till next time, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
see you guys.
And we'll talk to you all later.